Have you ever noticed that 1 in every 200 men on Earth is a direct descendant of one man? This is not a myth, not a legend, nor an exaggeration crafted for dramatic effect. It is a cold, hard fact proven by modern genetic science, a testament to the extraordinary influence of a single individual whose legacy extends far beyond the battlefields he conquered, far beyond the empires he built. This man was Genghis Khan, a figure often reduced to a brutal conqueror, a warlord whose name evokes images of bloodshed and destruction. But to see him only as a warrior is to miss the full scope of his impact. He was more than a conqueror. He was a black swan in the history of global biodiversity, a force that reshaped not just the map of the world, but the very biological fabric of humanity itself. His life was a storm that swept across continents, leaving behind a trail of change that is still visible today. In the DNA of millions, in the connections between civilizations, and in the way we understand the power of one individual to alter the course of history. To truly understand Genghis Khan's legacy, we must first set aside the myth and the stereotypes. He was born Temujin, a child of the Mongolian steppes, into a world of chaos and conflict. His father, a tribal chieftain, was poisoned when Temujin was just 9 years old, leaving his family to fend for themselves in the harsh, unforgiving grasslands. He was abandoned, betrayed, and forced to survive by his wits alone, enduring hunger, cold, and constant threat of violence. These early years forged in him a resilience, a ruthlessness, and a vision that would later drive him to unite the warring Mongol tribes and build an empire unlike any the world had ever seen. He was not born to power, he seized it through courage, strategy, and an unyielding determination to never again be vulnerable. By the time he took the title, Genghis Khan, meaning universal ruler, he had already united the fragmented Mongol tribes under a single banner, turning a collection of nomadic warriors into a disciplined, unstoppable force. What followed was a series of conquests that would redraw the map of Eurasia, a campaign of expansion that stretched from the Pacific Ocean to the shores of the Mediterranean Sea. The empire he built was not just large, it was unprecedented in its scale and reach. At its peak, it covered more than 9 million square miles, a territory larger than the Roman Empire at its height, larger than the Persian Empire, larger than any contiguous land empire in human history. To put its size into perspective, it spanned from modern-day Korea in the east to Poland and Hungary in the west, from Siberia in the north to the borders of India and the Middle East in the south. This was not just a collection of conquered lands, it was a single, interconnected empire that brought together dozens of diverse cultures, religions, and peoples. Genghis Khan did not merely conquer, he integrated. He allowed conquered peoples to retain their customs, their religions, and their languages, as long as they swore loyalty to him and paid tribute. This policy of tolerance was revolutionary for its time, a departure from the brutal subjugation practiced by most conquerors of the era. It allowed the empire to thrive, fostering trade, cultural exchange, and technological innovation across continents that had once been isolated from one another. The Mongol Empire became a bridge between East and West, a place where goods, ideas, and people flowed freely, breaking down barriers that had existed for millennia. The scale of this empire is almost impossible to fathom. Imagine standing at the eastern edge of the empire, in what is now China, and traveling westward. You would pass through vast deserts, snow-capped mountains, fertile grasslands, and bustling cities, each with its own unique culture and way of life. Yet all part of the same empire, you would hear languages from Mandarin to Persian, from Russian to Arabic. You would see merchants selling silk from China, spices from India, and furs from Siberia. You would encounter scholars, artists, and scientists from across the known world, sharing knowledge and ideas that would shape the future of humanity. This was the world Genghis Khan created, a world where the distance between East and West was no longer an insurmountable barrier, One of the most remarkable achievements of this empire, and one of the least recognized, was the creation of the world's first truly international postal and communication system. While courier systems had existed in earlier civilizations, such as the Shang dynasty's sea system, the Western Zhou's postal service, and the Persian Empire's postal stations, none matched the scale, efficiency, and reach of the network Genghis Khan and his successors built. Known as the Yam system, it was a vast network of relay stations, messengers, and horses that stretched across the entire empire, connecting the capital to the farthest corners of the realm. Genghis Khan laid the groundwork for this system during his early conquests, establishing relay stations in newly conquered regions like western Liaoning as early as 1215, where rapid communication via relay horses helped prevent unnecessary bloodshed and maintain control over distant territories. His son Ogadai later formalized and expanded the Yam system, acting on the suggestion of his advisors Chena and Bailhadar, and implementing strict regulations to ensure its efficiency. Under Ogadai's rule, each relay station was equipped with a grain warehouse, and the families responsible for maintaining the stations, known as station households, were required to contribute a portion of their grain to support the system. Kublai Khan, Genghis Khan's grandson, further refined the system, creating the Directorate of Posts to oversee all relay station operations and establishing detailed rules for the treatment of messengers and the transport of goods and information. By the height of the empire, there were nearly 1,400 relay stations across the realm, with land stations equipped with thousands of horses, oxen, and carts, and water stations equipped with hundreds of boats to navigate rivers and lakes. The Yam system was far more than a military tool, though it certainly served that purpose. It was the lifeline of the empire, allowing for the rapid transmission of military orders, government decrees, and vital information across vast distances. Messengers on horseback could travel hundreds of miles in a single day, carrying sealed documents marked with imperial courier edicts or golden tallies to indicate their urgency. For emergency military matters, messengers could cover up to 400 miles in a day, ensuring that Genghis Khan and his generals were always informed of developments on the battlefield. This speed of communication was unprecedented, giving the Mongol armies a decisive advantage over their enemies, who often took weeks or months to receive news from distant frontiers. Beyond its military value, the Yam system revolutionized global trade and cultural exchange. It provided safe passage for merchants, scholars, and diplomats, allowing them to travel across the empire without fear of bandits or political unrest. This led to a golden age of trade known as the Pax Mongolica, a period of relative peace across Eurasia that lasted for centuries. Goods that had once been rare and expensive, such as silk, spices, and porcelain, became more accessible as merchants traveled freely along the Yam system's routes. Technologies, too, spread rapidly. Chinese papermaking, gunpowder, and printing techniques made their way to Europe, while European mathematics, astronomy, and medicine were introduced to the East. This cross-cultural exchange laid the groundwork for the modern world, fostering innovation and progress that would have been impossible without the interconnectedness Genghis Khan's empire provided. The Yam system also included a network of urgent foot couriers, a dedicated force of messengers who traveled on foot to deliver urgent documents. These messengers were stationed at intervals of 10, 15, or 25 miles. And they carried sealed intelligence in special boxes, covering up to 400 miles in a single day. This dual system of horse and foot messengers ensured that no matter the terrain or the urgency, information could be delivered quickly and reliably. The system was so efficient that Song Lian, a scholar of the Ming dynasty, later noted that it was the key to the empire's prosperity, allowing all ships and caravans to reach their destinations and the entire world to be united, and making the Mongol Empire one of the most powerful and connected civilizations in history. While the Yam system and the vast empire are remarkable achievements, they pale in comparison to Genghis Khan's most enduring legacy, his genetic footprint on humanity. Modern genetic research has uncovered a stunning truth: approximately 0.5% of the world's male population, roughly 1 in every 200 men, carries a unique Y chromosome haplotype that can be traced directly back to Genghis Khan and his male relatives. This translates to more than 16 million men alive today who are direct descendants of the universal ruler, a number that continues to grow with each generation. This genetic legacy is unparalleled in human history, a biological testament to the sheer scale of his influence and the longevity of his dynasty's rule. The discovery of this genetic lineage began in the early 2000s when a team of geneticists, led by Dr. Chris Tyler Smith, conducted a study of Y chromosomes from men across Eurasia. They found a single haplotype, known as haplogroup R1bm343, that was present in an unusually high frequency in regions once part of the Mongol Empire, from Mongolia and China to Central Asia, the Middle East, and even parts of Europe. Further research revealed that this haplotype originated in Mongolia around the 12th century, coinciding with Genghis Khan's lifetime. The only explanation for its widespread distribution was that it was carried by Genghis Khan and his sons, who spread it across the empire through their numerous wives and concubines. Genghis Khan's genetic legacy is not the result of chance. As he conquered vast territories, he established ruling dynasties across Eurasia, and his sons and grandsons followed in his footsteps, taking wives and concubines from the lands they subdued. These descendants went on to rule these regions for centuries, passing down their Y chromosome to generations of offspring. This practice was not unique to Genghis Khan, but the scale of his conquests and the longevity of his dynasty's rule meant that his genetic lineage spread farther and wider than any other in human history. Even today, genetic testing continues to uncover new descendants, including a man in the United States who was found to have 8 out of 9 physiological markers matching Genghis Khan's genetic profile, making him the first confirmed descendant outside of Asia. This genetic legacy is more than just a curiosity. It is a window into the past, a way to trace the movement of peoples and cultures across continents. It proves that Genghis Khan's influence was not just political or military, it was biological, altering the genetic makeup of humanity itself. His conquests did not just change the map of the world, they changed the DNA of millions of people, leaving a mark that will endure for millennia. This is the true meaning of being a black swan in global biodiversity, a figure whose impact was unpredictable, transformative, and far-reaching, altering the course of biological history in ways that no one could have anticipated. Genghis Khan's role as a black swan in global biodiversity extends beyond his genetic legacy. His empire also facilitated the spread of plants, animals, and even pathogens across continents, reshaping ecosystems and altering the balance of life on Earth. As his armies and merchants traveled across Eurasia, they carried with them crops, livestock, and seeds, introducing new species to regions where they had never before existed. For example, Genghis Khan's quest for immortality led him to import evergreen trees from distant lands, using elephants to transport them back to his capital, a practice that some scholars argue was one of the earliest recorded instances of intentional species introduction. Though its ecological impact remains a subject of debate. While some of these introductions were intentional, others were accidental. Pathogens, too, spread along the Yam system's routes, leading to the transmission of diseases across continents. But even these unintended consequences contributed to the reshaping of global biodiversity, altering the genetic diversity of populations and driving evolutionary change. Genghis Khan's empire created a single interconnected ecosystem where species from distant regions could interact and interbreed, leading to new combinations of genes and the emergence of new traits. This interconnectedness was unprecedented, and its effects are still visible today in the diversity of life across Eurasia. To truly appreciate Genghis Khan's legacy, we must abandon the one-dimensional view of him as a brutal conqueror. He was a man of contradictions. A ruthless warrior who valued loyalty and honor, a conqueror who promoted tolerance and cultural exchange, a leader who built an empire on bloodshed, yet fostered a period of peace and prosperity. He was not a hero, nor was he a villain. He was a product of his time, a man shaped by the harsh realities of the Mongolian steppes, who rose to power through sheer will and determination. His actions were driven by a desire to unite his people, to protect his empire, and to leave a lasting legacy. Critics often focus on the violence of his conquests, and rightfully so. His armies left a trail of destruction, toppling kingdoms, displacing millions, and causing untold suffering. But to judge him solely by the bloodshed is to ignore the profound and lasting changes he brought to the world. The empire he built connected civilizations, fostered trade and innovation, and reshaped the genetic makeup of humanity. The YAM system laid the groundwork for modern global communication networks. And his genetic legacy is a testament to the power of one individual to alter the course of biological history. Genghis Khan's story is a reminder that history is not just a collection of battles and empires, it is a story of human potential, of how one individual, born into poverty and chaos, can rise to change the world. It is a story of the interconnectedness of humanity, of how the actions of one person can affect the lives of millions, even centuries later. It is a story of the power of legacy, of how a single life can leave an indelible mark on the world, in the map of continents, in the flow of trade, and in the DNA of generations. When we look at the world today, we see the echoes of Genghis Khan's legacy everywhere. The global interconnectedness we take for granted, the trade routes, the communication networks, the cultural exchange can be traced back to the empire he built. The genetic diversity of millions of people bears his mark, a silent reminder of his influence. He was a black swan, a figure whose impact was unpredictable and transformative, altering the course of history and the fabric of life on Earth. Genghis Khan did not just conquer lands. He conquered time, leaving a legacy that has outlived his empire, his armies, and even his own name. His story is not just about power and conquest. It is about the power of one individual to shape the world, to alter the balance of nature, and to leave a mark that will endure for eternity. He was the man who changed Earth's DNA, a conqueror, a visionary, and a black swan whose influence will be felt for centuries to come. The Imperial Shadows are full of stories of powerful figures, but none are as transformative as Genghis Khan. He was a man who turned a nomadic tribe into a global empire, who connected continents, who reshaped the genetic makeup of humanity. He was a force of nature, a storm that swept across Eurasia, leaving behind a trail of change that is still visible today. His story challenges us to see beyond the myths and the stereotypes, to recognize the complexity of human history, and to understand the profound impact that one individual can have on the world. When you look around you, remember this. 1 in every 200 men you see carries the DNA of Genghis Khan. His legacy is not just in the history books, it is in the blood of millions, in the connections between civilizations, and in the very fabric of life on Earth. He was more than a conqueror. He was a black swan, a figure who changed the course of history and the DNA of our planet. And his story is far from over. This is the power of history, the power of one individual to shape the world, to alter the balance of nature, and to leave a legacy that endures for millennia. Genghis Khan's story is a testament to that power, a reminder that even the most unlikely figures can rise to change the world. He was the man who changed Earth's DNA, and his legacy will continue to fascinate, inspire, and challenge us for centuries to come.